everyone. Welcome back to One Sustainability, our 2023 Global Sustainability Conference here on the One Business World platform. Today, we stand at the intersection of commerce and impact, gathering at one of the world's premier platforms. As we navigate the pressing challenges of our era, this conference is more than just a dialogue, it's a clarion call for action. Here, market insight doesn't just meet, but propels environmental foresight. Together, we have the power and the responsibility to shape the next chapter of global sustainability. Now it's our great pleasure to welcome to the conference. Joining us today from Holland is Rebecca Self. She is the founder and managing director of Seawolf Sustainability. And Rebecca's topic this morning is sustainable finance. What's love got to do with it? We may have to do some BMI or royalties there with. We'll see. Rebecca, good to see you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, and delighted to be here today.
Let me hand it off over to you.
Marvelous. And as said, today I'm speaking from my organization called Seawolf Sustainability Consulting. And very briefly, we help finance professionals, accountants, management teams, banks, and investors with their sustainability consulting needs. And a little bit about me. So I am a chartered accountant by background. I studied economics and politics at university. And I also studied for a master's subsequently, where I focused on satellite data and using that in banks' climate disclosures. I was also in banking for 20 years. And so, as you've probably guessed from that description, I would describe my background, my experience as very much in a data and standards orientation, quite logical, lots of numbers, lots of quantification. I've spent lots of time measuring different types of information, including lots of financial information, and reporting that. And the presentation today has the topic of love in the title, from the famous song by Tina Turner. And just to start off by saying rest in peace, and the inspiration for this title was really that question around how this does or doesn't intersect with sustainable finance, and is it secondary or is it something more important in this whole topic? The presentation will be split into three main pieces. Firstly, some definitions, then exploring that a little bit further, and then some considerations and questions. It's really from a practitioner point of view, having worked in the ESG and sustainability space for about the last 10 years. It's not getting into any politics or any psychology. There's lots of different people, different perspectives. I certainly don't have all of the answers on this. So it was really just my personal thoughts and views, having worked in this space for some time. And then starting with definitions and starting with sustainable finance. So this is defined as integrating E, S, and G, that's environment, social, and governance considerations, into long-term finance and business decisions. There's different shades of that. This is a spectrum of different types of sustainable finance with the red bar. And at its most simplest form, that could be understanding those ESG considerations, such as board governance, maybe anti-bribery and corruption, human rights, how businesses are thinking about those and integrating those and using those as part of an investment framework. So that's the ESG risk analysis. It could also include, although this is very much smaller, impact finance, where finance looks to have positive, tangible impact in the world and society, and that can be themed around different types of issues that could include water, climate, or other social factors. But today, largely ESG and sustainable finance is an investment framework and used to understand risks, and have reporting externally to investors. And what that means in practice is lots of discussion around return on investment, metrics, data, standards for measuring those different metrics and that data, and lots of reporting, huge amounts of people involved in reporting some of this information externally. And frankly, often not that much discussion around the human aspect of this whole topic, emotional aspects around this whole topic, whether good, bad, or indifferent, and really those social dynamics. So to date, it's been very data and reporting focused. Another two definitions also in the title, and this is the dictionary definition of love, which is feelings of liking and caring for somebody or something, and particularly associated with family, friends, behaviors such as passion, intimacy, and positive emotion, and largely unmeasurable. And love is also associated with trust. And this is the trust equation, which is used in all sorts of different contexts, including business. And this has, across the top of the equation, credibility. That's being credible, doing what you say and understanding what you say, plus reliability, having a deadline, meeting that deadline, not just knowing what you say, but actually doing it and being reliable in doing it. Plus intimacy, having a degree of familiarity with an organization, a person, or a thing. And that's divided by self-orientation, or in other words, self-interest. So really, when we get that feeling that there's self-interest or a more selfish motive, it's very quick to undermine trust and undermine the top part of that equation. And exploring this a little bit further, and now moving on to the next section, and how this relates to sustainable finance and some ideas. Well, Maslow, Abraham Maslow, was an American psychologist. He was alive from 1908 to 1970. And he devised this simplified pyramid, which has at the very top of the pyramid the best humans can be, where the best behaviors, the best accomplishments and success are found at the top of the pyramid, while more basic needs for human flourishing are at the bottom of the pyramid. So to unpack what those needs are in this pyramid a bit more and how they relate to success, at the bottom is the very most basic needs. That includes having clothes, food, water. Safety in the orange is having, a roof over one's head, being able to pay bills, having job security. And then as we go upwards, we end up with more orientations around emotions, such as love in that yellow component. So to be the best we can be and accomplish the most we can be, having ideas and innovations, it's nearer the top of the pyramid. And this has motivations for humans as well, depending where one is on that pyramid. And today, people are at different points, of course, and there's all sorts of different contexts. But maybe to give one small example and relate this back to the financial industry, just in the past 2 weeks, there have been announcements around redundancies in the financial industry. To give an example, Barclays, the bank in the UK, announced that 5% of customer-facing staff could be made redundant. The CEO of Citibank was quoted as saying, we'll be saying goodbye to some very talented and hardworking colleagues as part of a restructure. Also at a more macro level, the CEO of JP Morgan said that the world is entering its most dangerous time in decades, including around energy, food, and trade. And so both inside financial organizations and also the macro environment financial organizations are part of, that has impacts for this pyramid and for perhaps how people may be showing up and dealing with different types of work. And so I'll just leave it to you to think about how that does or doesn't impact. And added to this, there's sometimes fear and nervousness in those financial organizations, explicitly in sustainable finance and in some people who work in that environment, or perhaps in the wider banks and financial services. And the definition of fear is that bad feeling you have when you're in danger or something is frightening. Sometimes that means something new. And here there's a survey being shared. And these survey results are from a wider report that was released by the Finance Innovation Lab and the Climate Safe Lending Network back in September. And that report had insights over the past year from inside the financial industry and a survey of many people who worked in the financial industry. And they said, 60%, that their own institution was nervous at being seen to lead on climate safe lending. Also, in that same survey, 67% of people who were surveyed said that their organization was nervous at being seen to be greenwashing or having some form of litigation. So there's lots of fear and nervousness from this report. And again, does that mean that it's the best environment for this flourishing, for having new ideas, new creativity, for the types of changes that the world is facing? And perhaps that also leads to other types of uncertainty and other behaviors. So there's an example here of uncertainty, which is something where you don't know the outcome, there's risks, it's unsure, and that can lead to certain types of behaviors. And almost by its nature, when we look forward, when we're trying to project, think about some of the changes which could happen in the world as a result of the environment or social challenges of today, they are uncertain. And the K report, which came out in 2012, and this came out after the financial crisis, it was commissioned by the then UK government to look at the reasons behind how the financial crisis happened. One of the things they found was the herd mentality in financial markets. And what this means is that the financial markets and participants inside it tend to like to organize as a pack, as a herd, and sometimes copy one another. There's perceived to be a risk without standing out at the front, as mentioned on the earlier slide, so that fear to lead, but also being at the bottom, so often wanting to be part of a pack. And that has problems sometimes, in this instance with the financial crisis, if the entire industry is moving together and behaviors aren't being called out, particular scenarios aren't being called out. And this picture here, this cute little creature, is a lemming. And lemmings, sadly, are known to have fatal tendencies when they all move together and follow one another. And I hope that it's possible that some of this behavior might be happening today in financial markets regarding climate. And if I take one example from the scientific journal Nature in the last few weeks, there was a journal that, and an article, academic article, that looked at the amount of stranded assets. So this was power plant assets that could become stranded in the future due to policies as a result of some of the worst impacts of climate change that we're seeing today. And it estimated these assets which are stranded that could be written off, that would have to be impaired, would have a value which would wipe out 80% of the equity of listed asset owners. So if financial markets continue to work together, continue to have this herd mentality, this fear to lead, and operate as part of a group, particularly around climate, there are consequences to that herd behavior. Now, moving on to considerations. So what does that all mean for people, for business, for organizations, and what has that all got to do with love? The title of this presentation, we're focused on finance. And firstly, thinking about some of considerations and ideas to do with people, then to do with business, and then at more of a macro level. Well, firstly, for people who are working within those financial organizations, and particularly with ESG teams or sustainable finance teams, there is uncertainty, and it's very hard to predict exactly how things are going to play out in the future. In the past, I've been asked, often by very well-meaning people who work in those types of organizations, to come up with almost a perfect forecast of how their portfolio, their investment portfolio might look today, how it will look in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, how the carbon emissions of the companies inside that investment portfolio might reduce or might go up, and government policy. And sitting here today, we don't have crystal balls. It isn't certain exactly how that's going to play out. So some of the considerations for people where love and those positive emotions come in are about really acknowledging that there is uncertainty, accepting some of that uncertainty, having more trust with our colleagues, but understanding the reliability and credibility of certain organizations and data and standards. And also a more human level, really trying to unpick what do we need, what level of data, what level of certainty do we need, considering that that's not going to be perfect. And it's really important to understand how we also back one another up, how we turn up to work. And one small story, I recall working at a large financial institution, and someone who's incredibly senior in the firm called me up one-on-one after a particular bruising meeting where there'd been lots and lots of debates about data and standards and reporting, and it wasn't good enough and it wasn't certain enough, and all sorts of other things. And he said, "Rebecca, I got your back. This isn't going to be perfect. It doesn't exist. But I got your back. Just keep going, keep doing the right thing, and we'll get there." And so I think it's acknowledging that there is this imperfection. Sometimes with that data, maybe people are trying to hold on to give themselves that level of certainty. So there's some acknowledgement, letting go a little bit, but also having one another's back and really trying to be credible in how we present some of that information. So that's one thing. The second is for ourselves as humans, some of this work in sustainable finance can be really hard. And so it's really important to have different outlets, different areas of life that we love, where we can bring that positive emotion, often fill up our cup or replenish our cup. And that looks like different things to different people. The photo here is a photo of the Berlin Love Parade from quite a few years ago. For me, music is a very big part of my life. I really enjoy listening to music, live music, and it really fills my cup. There was even a similar event in Berlin that I managed to catch last year, which was Rave the Planets. And again, linking in some of these themes together. But that's really important. That looks like all sorts of different things for different people. And then finally, thinking of organizations, I was at an accounting conference here in the Netherlands, which had many tax updates and IFRS updates. That was in the past month. And there was a business coach there called Jan van Setter, who has a background in accounting and finance. And excuse my language, but he talked about shit situations. So really rubbish situations in business. We know, we've been in those meetings where things just go horribly, things don't get signed off, or it's just incredibly painful, lots of feedback, lots and lots of challenges. And he talked about when you're in those situations, trying, not always easy, at a human level, to sometimes add a little bit of fun and trying to make a bit of humor or lighten up. Of course, again, that depends on the context. But something that really stuck with me that he said is if you have a shit situation and add fun, it creates a shift. And I think often with sustainable finance, trying to think of that shift when we're making changes, challenging the status quo is really important. And also being kind to one another too. And moving on to business and love and emotion, and what that means as more of a business level instead of a human level. So often in business, I think we almost try to pretend that love and emotion doesn't come into it, and it's all about data and metrics and financial standards. But actually, I think it's probably got a little bit more that emotion than perhaps we often think. And so here's just a few examples. Firstly, this is a Harley Davidson motorbike. It's actually the EV version of a Harley Davidson motorbike. And, you know, with motorbikes or even cars, there's a very simple function, which is getting from A to B. But actually, people spend phenomenal amounts of money, join whole communities, are incredibly passionate and loyal to brands because of that emotion, because of that attachment, whether it's Harley Davidson or Ferrari, or even something else. This is example of the arm is actually my brother-in-law, and that's his arm, and he has an apple tattoo. He is incredibly passionate about Apple products, as you could probably guess, and to this point, and he really, I don't think it understates to say he loves that brand. And just look at how successful that brand is. And then one final example is today I decided to go a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I'm actually wearing a football jersey. And this is my football club. It's Arsenal Football Club from London. And again, I have a deep, deep affection for this club. I'm so passionate. I try to watch many of the games. I'm lucky enough to have been and visited many times, have lots and lots of kits and follow them through up and down. And that business is worth over $500 million in the past few years. That's revenue per year. So this love and emotion is really important. And often that's about going above and beyond and building that brand and building that emotional connection. And I would just say from a business level or a finance level, how many of us feel like that about our financial services providers or our investment portfolios? Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but just to leave it there. And then finally, thinking about the economic and the macro level and where this emotion and love comes in. So there are countless ways to measure economic growth in financial terms GDP, share prices, lots and lots of government forecasts from national central banks, from all sorts of other IMF, all sorts of other organizations. But how much do we know about actually how people are feeling emotionally in an economy? Well, this is one way, one example of how to start thinking about that. And this is the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, which includes economies such as Iceland, New Zealand, Canada, Scotland, Finland. For short, that's the WeGo countries. And it's about measuring the present and future financial security in the long term for people, the economy, and the environment. So it's really trying to bring in all these different types of measures and well-being. So not just purely looking at financial numbers, but other types of ways of thinking about the economy, how it serves people and serves the planet too. And that moves on to some very sort of final messages from my side. And really maybe three main messages to end with. First is, with sustainable finance and ES and G, it's a lot more than data. And it can't always be measured in very quantifiable terms. I think it's really important that we do remember there's those other aspects to businesses, to human behavior, and to our economies too. So sustainable finance is more than just data reporting and standards. That's the first thing. The second thing is showing up with love and different types of emotions are really important. And for me today, doing this presentation, it felt a bit uncomfortable. This is something I'm really not used to talking about. You know, I have to try and overcome some uncertainty that I have myself. And I think in our own individual ways, we each have those different perspectives. And I think if we are to get to some sustainable solutions for the world, for our economies, for financial organizations, companies in the real economy, we need to build some bridges, be really honest as humans with one another to build that consensus. Think about how we show up, how we lead changes or not, and be a little bit vulnerable as well, and admit when we're unsure and acknowledge that uncertainty. And finally, this is a quote from Joaquin Phoenix on the screen, the actor, and this was from his late brother. And it was part of Joaquin Phoenix's Oscar acceptance speech in the last few years. And looking at the world today and thinking about love, this isn't secondary. It's really important. And so I hope if we all in the world can run to the rescue with love, peace will follow. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Rebecca, great job. Thank you so much for your talk and your presentation. I think Tina Turner did you well with her song and her title, and having that be the foundation of your remarks. Outstanding. You know, it's a shame the lemmings get a bad rap, because they are pretty cute. You know, to come back with, oh, you're like a lemming, right? They all follow each other. Hey, thanks for reminding us on the branding on all counts. And I suspected, but I didn't want to, jump out ahead. So thanks for showing your Arsenal jersey as well. Is that the English Premier League?
It sure is, yes. And they're near the top as it stands, so hopefully it stays that way.
My uncle has become a big fan. Most of his Saturday morning here in New York is consumed with watching the matches from Europe through the afternoon. So he's become a big fan. I teach some management classes here at my college, King's College, and your timing is great. We just covered Abe Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So thank you. I'm going to work that into my class this week. Hey, by the way, you think this doesn't have real life appeal? Here's Rebecca's talk, and look, she was covering it as well. It's interesting. You really do have to have those basic platform pieces first, right? Like physiological needs and safety, and as you move up towards that higher realm of self advocacy and esteem, you need to really have that in place. And I know Maslow talks about sometimes people slip back a little bit, and that's okay, but you have to always keep kind of reinforcing that. You think about sustainability and trust and love. All of that is about establishing that foundation and getting people to trust. And I loved, math is hard, but I mean, credibility plus reliability plus intimacy over self-orientation is a good lesson for all of us to remember. So a chartered accountant, huh? So us accountants have to stick together. So you did a wonderful job. You're a natural speaker, natural presenter. You did just a wonderful job there. Hey, that Berlin photo, that was pretty impressive. Did they ever do a count on the number of people?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think it was many, many thousands, like tens of thousands.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of people without the Rolling Stones headlining, maybe, unless maybe they were there, right? Because that reminded me a little bit of when they were in what is it, Green Park
Yeah.
in London. It kind of looked a little bit like that. I mean, just you break it down to responsibility and sustainability, and oftentimes if you have that foundation based on love, based on credibility, the results will follow. The results will follow. You're empowering people, you're empowering businesses and economies, and it just kind of it all collectively kind of moves forward if we all can have a little bit of perhaps patience with each other, maybe listen a little bit more often as opposed to, well, I'm just waiting for you to finish so I can get my points in, and kind of take it from there. In your experience, Rebecca, when you again being a chartered accountant and you think about numbers and measurements and data and all of those types of things, how often with the people you work with and the businesses you interact with, how often do you take a step back and say, okay, well, here's the report and here's what it shows, but then how do you get them to focus on the qualitative aspects of kind of trust and love and accountability and things like that? How do you try to get those to focus? Because you mentioned Barclays, Citi, and J.P. Morgan. I mean, at the end of the day, they're coming back and saying, well, the figures may not lie, and there's a redundancy type of thing. But how do you get them to kind of recognize that, we're kind of all in this together?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it varies a huge amount. I think maybe two examples or maybe two things. Sometimes I do wonder just physically the way that businesses are structured, and particularly some very large financial organizations, naturally the environment doesn't lend itself to these conversations. So being in a big glass tower, sitting across a great big giant board table, all wearing suits, it can be a little bit of a barrier, I'll be honest, to having these more emotive conversations. So sometimes what that means is having a conversation in a different setting, going and grabbing a coffee and taking a walk, or just physically putting yourself in a different place. So that's one thing, is just sort of physically getting out there, doing something different, and it can be super simple. So yeah, just taking a walk. I think there's also different tools. So there's an organization called Be Kind, and it's got a hashtag Be Kind, and they have lots of different tools for doing that, as well as at a more individual level. There's the inner development goals, which are from the UN. So sometimes introducing those while talking about some of these bigger macro topics can be another way to bring it in.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for your contributions to our conference today. Wonderful presentation. Terrific talk. We wish you and your football team all the all the best here as we move forward. And please come back and see us again and give us an update on how things are going in your part of the world with Seawolf sustainability. And we really appreciated your remarks today and your talk. Just really putting it on that level playing field with trust and love and credibility, all important concepts. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
Take good care. See you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.